Welcome to this week's edition of Inter-University Debate, which is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator for this debate. My name is Loki Fancy. I'm an advocate, a lecturer, and a tax consultant. In this week's edition, I get to host my students from Gulu University. Students from Gulu University, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are discussing the status of Uganda's economy as Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence. Before I introduce this topic and we delve deep into it, let me introduce the panelists for today's debate. I'll start with the gentleman who is seated right next to me, and that is Mr. Okello Innocent Wach. Wach is pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Education, and he is the regional coordinator of National Economic Empowerment Dialogue. He was telling me a while ago that it's a new political party. So Wach, you're welcome to the Inter-University Debate.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our second panelist is Miss Lanyero Natalia. Natalia is pursuing a Bachelor of Public Administration and Management, and she is the Guild Deputy Prime Minister. So you're welcome, Natalia, to the Inter-University Debate. Okay, so our third panelist is Mr. Loki Willy Sam. He is pursuing Bachelor of Laws, so this one is directly my student. He is pursuing a Bachelor of Laws from Gulu University, and he was a guild aspirant for the position of guild president. And he told me they are in court for, he is challenging the guild election. Okay, so he is a guild aspirant. He was a guild aspirant and is our third panelist for today's debate. You're welcome to the debate.
Thank you.
Okay, our fourth panelist for today is also directly my student. She is called Miss Wafoyorwoth Phoebe. She's pursuing Bachelor of Laws from Gulu University, and she's the Vice President of Human Rights and Debate Society at the university. You're welcome to the debate.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so as I introduced earlier, we are discussing the state of Uganda's economy as Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence. So on Sunday, 9th of October, Uganda celebrated 60 years of independence, having gotten independence from the British in 1962. Uganda has gone through a number of changes in its economy ever since 1962 when it got its independence. And we are going to discuss all the changes that Uganda has gone through since independence up to this year, 2022. Uganda also, a few months ago, that was in June 2022, passed its budget, which is over 48,000 trillion. And Uganda plans to fund that budget using both revenue collection from the citizens and, of course, internationally, under international trade, as well as debt. So that makes us dive into that discussion as well, the issue of public debt in Uganda. What is the current status quo of public debt in Uganda, and how is Uganda faring in terms of debt payment? What are the strategies that we have put in place to see to it that we have paid back our debts, and several other issues in there. We are also going to talk about issues of revenue collection. How are we faring on issues of revenue collection? And we are going to look at both tax and non-tax revenue. We'll look at issues of unemployment in Uganda, the middle income status. How are we faring? Recently we have reached there, then we are not there, then again we denied having said we were there. So the students are going to unpack the issue of middle income status, where they are going to look at first, what does it mean to be in a middle income status? Then where do we lie when it comes to the issue of middle income status? And if we are not there, how do we get there? So we are going to discuss that as well. We will look at issues of Ugandans in the money economy and several other issues. So let's delve into the discussion, students of Gulu University. So I'll start with Innocent. So Innocent, let's start from the beginning. Give us an overview of Uganda's economy from independence up to now. What is its general overview?
Thank you so much, moderator, for such a great opportunity. If we talk about the independence, so I mean the economy of Uganda, from the times of independence up to now, we get to look at some critical issues. First of all, the issue of the budget. If you look at the budget of Uganda from the times of independence, that's 1962 up to now, I would say it has been growing, and it has been growing to now the 48 trillion that we're talking about right now. But certain things have still remained questionable. The question of the increase in taxes that people pay. Number two, even the ways of collecting the taxes. If you go far as how far agriculture has also gone, because before today, before the 60 years we're celebrating as an independent state, we relied basically on peasant agriculture. But now, where we've reached now is the government is trying to go towards having an economy that is that looks at plantation agriculture or agriculture for commercial use. And so I would basically say the economy has been growing from the times of independence up to now, as evidenced by the budget, of course. But now it has been growing at the expense of certain things. The poverty level has continued to soar because taxes are biting people so much. You also look at the issue of increase in public debt, like the 48 trillion, over 50% is financed by debts. Also, you get to look at the unemployment situation has continued to get worse as we add years in our independence, and even as the economy grows. And so I would say the economy has been growing, or it's still growing, at the expense of the people. So of course it gets worse when last year, when we had the issue of coronavirus, when the whole world economy was hit by coronavirus. That is what has tantamounted to the change in the high prices today, the low purchasing power of money today, and sadly, the taxes have continued to increase, even as the purchasing power of money has gone down. And so I would basically say from the time of independence up to now, we've moved from a peasant agricultural state to a commercial agricultural state, because that is still our backbone. And but most of it all, the economy is growing at the expense of people's lives. People don't have decent housing facilities. And even at that, when we once said we were already reaching a middle income status, we looked at the issues of the housing. People are still living in manyatas in Karamoja sub-region, for example. But the economy is growing. And so the question was, where is the economy growing? Is it inclusive? Is it having everybody? Yeah. So from the times of independence, even up to the 60 years, I think we are celebrating, but we have achieved less in terms of human development or human growth. I can say money is in the hands of very few people. Yeah, very few Ugandans who are living a certain life, but the majority population is still in poverty, is still in hunger, is still in poor health situations, and these are the things that cover our economy. And now with the debt burden, which goes to about 48 trillion now, is a bigger problem for us. And to me, it's
actually
a great indicator. 79 trillion. Yeah, you see that. 79 trillion. And I think according to World Bank rates, we have already reached the red light. So that is not good news for the economy, much as we may say it's growing, but it's growing at the expense of us. It's growing at the expense of exploitation of resources that we can't see. You see, so it's kind of bad news for us. So I would say from the times of independence up to now, there has not been much achieved in terms of human growth. Because I think one of the reasons why the World Bank denied us the middle income status situation was that human development was still at its lowest in this country. Human rights violations were high in this country. And I think those are some of the things that are considered for a country to be called a middle income status, despite Other factors may be constant, like economic growth, maybe per capita income. Those ones might be there. But I think there are others that constitute the middle income status.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that overview of Uganda's economy from independence. Let me move to Natalia.
Yes.
So Natalia, we are now in 2022, and on Sunday we celebrated 60 years of independence. And people ate chicken, people were celebrating, taking soda. So what is the overview of the economy right now in 2022 as we celebrate 60 years of independence?
Well, once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I must really acknowledge the fact that not so many people even slaughtered chicken or ate beef in the elections. Actually, not elections, sorry, in the celebration that has just
Others were
passed.
eating malakwang.
Exactly.
Others
Because
did not eat.
the situation is alarming. And the biggest cry of the nation at the moment is money. And we know that without money, without finance, nothing can smoothly run. Talk of it in the church sector or any other sector, money is key. And now we have seen this with indicators like the government, because this cuts across. It has both affected the ruling government and the citizens down here at the grassroots. The indicators, one of them is the fact that the government is really delaying in releasing the salaries of the civil servants. Another one is releasing the living out allowances of the government-sponsored students. Then more critically is the fact that the government is finding really a lot of difficulties in disbursing the funds or resources meant for the parish development model. So realize that all these indicators point towards the fact that the economy is not doing well. We registered or have witnessed the fact that there have been an increment or acceleration in GDP growth rate, that is the gross domestic product, which means the total monetary value of the goods and services produced within the country. And that accelerated from about 3.5% to 4.6% from the previous fiscal financial year to this very one that we are in. However, this comes with the fact that things are still really challenging because it's not a coverage for most of the sectors. Some sectors are still lagging behind. This has been basically in the acceleration. It has been mostly evidenced in the service sector, which came about with definitely the reopening of schools and people getting back to jobs and everyone trying to pick up from where they stopped and got stuck by the fact that pandemic came in and everything was just put on hold. So with so many factors that cover up the fact that Uganda is still struggling, one of them being the inflation rates, another one being the fact that the debt burdens are ever increasing, the court case that was taken by DRC Congo in the International Criminal
The National
Court.
Court of Justice.
Yes, was just recently concluded, and Uganda is to pay a very huge amount of money. So all these accelerating factors that are actually accelerating us very negatively, I mean, in a very regressive manner, shows that a lot is wanting in Uganda, because there is actually no need to celebrate. Even if we have already celebrated, there is no worth in the celebration that we just had.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll get back to Natalia later on that to look at the different issues within the economy one by one. But for now, let me move to Willy. So Willy, Natalia gave us a general outlook of the economy in 2022. And also earlier we heard from Innocent, who took us through history. Let us look at Uganda's position within the East African community. As we know, East African community now has 7 states, and Somalia is also trying to join. So a few weeks ago, Somalia's application was fast-tracked. That means anytime from now, we might have Somalia joining the EAC. So my question to you is, what is our standing as Uganda within the EAC economically, if you compare it with the other 6 EAC member countries?
Most times when someone speaks of the EAC, yes, I do understand that we now have about 7 states, but most people would think of majorly 3 or 5, yeah, and that would include, of course, the pioneers, the 3, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda,
the first
and then
signatories.
those that did join much later, Rwanda,
And
Burundi, and then those that are trying to join in Sudan and the likes of Somalia. Now, I think if we are to speak of Uganda's position in amongst all these, personally, I would want to focus on the top 3. That is Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. And in so doing, I would want to look at different aspects of what makes a country to be considered on a national scale. Things like the GDP, the GNI, and most importantly, I think the dollar rate in every single country. I think we're now on 3,700, something of that sort. And it is for a fact that Tanzania and Kenya both have a much superior currency to that of Uganda. And as I speak, Tanzania is in the middle income status because of the late John Pombe Magufuli, which means that whereas the distance between the independence of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda is not a very big lag, Uganda has taken its time to move towards a much better position in the sitting of the ESC, which means we have a number of expenses that are uncalled for. And if you listen to speeches from people like PL Lumumba, you would hear the critics of countries such as Uganda, where he says that the only thing with politics in such countries is ill-gotten wealth. That is the only gauge of politics in such countries, which is why even when a few months ago we claimed to have reached the middle income status, we are not there yet. So Uganda is not yet where it should be as projected amongst the EAC countries.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Phoebe, let's delve into the discussion about public debt. As we heard earlier from the previous panelists, we have got debt that is on our neck as Ugandans, and then Uganda also plans to fund its budget using debt. So as we pay, we are still planning to borrow more to add on the ones that we have. So I'll start with the status of Uganda's debt, public debt, as per now. So where do we stand?
All right, thank you very much. Well, Uganda at 60 is quite disappointing given the large debt rate, right? So what we talk about today, we're looking at public debt. Public debt is going to be the loans, several loans that are gotten by the government in trust of the people so that they can finance certain things within the country, and the sureties that are given are the resources and the people within the state, meaning each and every Ugandan is entitled to pay back to this debt, all right? That's what you're looking at. And Uganda at 60, looking at the current status quo, we have actually shot up within 22% rise in our borrowing status, bringing us to currently 79 trillion US dollars, if you look at that. And that is quite a lot for us in Uganda. Why do we say it's quite a lot? Because if IMF and World Bank are telling you 50 trillion is the best you can go at in order for you to be a standard of borrowing. And if it is beyond that, you're going to be looked at as a backward country and you're going to be regressing economically. And therefore, that is why we're looking at Uganda. All right. So why does Uganda constantly borrow? It claims it is financing its budget. That's what we're looking at right now. Over half of our budget is being financed by debt, and they are continuously borrowing, and that is going to increase the debt burden. So what we are looking at is very soon you're not going to only have 79 trillion, but most likely we're going to be soaring to 81 within the next year. So that is the current status quo within Uganda, and it's quite painful.
Okay, just to be clear, the 79 trillion is Uganda shillings.
Yes.
Okay. So let me get back to Innocent. So Innocent, we are talking about debt. So my question to you is, on issues of public debt, 60 years down the road, why do you think we still have all these debt burdens in 60 years and we are still planning to borrow more?
Interesting. Why are we still interested in borrowing more even at 60 years? As a country, we suffer from, I would say, as a teacher of economics, we suffer from planning issues. Why? There are countries that Uganda got independence before. That Uganda got independence before some countries, and probably right now they are doing better than those countries. No, those countries are doing better than Uganda because I think the leadership in those countries does good planning. And so it's absurd to talk about dates in a country that has celebrated independence or pseudo-independence for 60 years. So I think one of the reasons why there is still borrowing, and we're intending to even borrow more, is because of unnecessary expenditures of the government. And this is something to do with policy. Like some example I always want to give is the expenditures of State House are uncalled for, I would say. And then the expenditures of Parliament alone as a lawmaking body, they are also uncalled for. So I think the biggest problem is on policies that are taken by the government to address economic challenges in this country. And then if you look at some of the programs that have been put in the country with the intention of solving maybe unemployment among the youth, the operational wealth creation issues, now the PDM that is coming, these are projects that take a lot of money. But these projects, do they yield fruits? They don't yield fruits, definitely. Why? Because no planning is done prior to effect these things. You see. So by now, I think if government was looking at solving maybe a particular economic problem in the country, there would be one single project that would have solved all this, other than having a series of things that have failed or are still going to fail. Are you seeing that? So it is something that has to do with policy, planning, and then secondly, how do you utilize the resources that you have? Talking from a political point of view, as National Economic Empowerment Dialogue, we looked at this. We say the resources this country has are enough to make the current population to live a decent life. It all takes a government that plans, that does prior planning. And planning has something to do with consultation. And that's where inclusivity comes in. You're planning for somebody in Agago who can't, because they say you're very poor if you can't spend or earn $1 a day, but there are people who can't even spend or earn half $1 a week. And the planning is being done for them in Kampala. You don't know their needs. So these are reasons why these programs have been failing, and the debt has to continue going on. Because now when you invest money in something that is not going to work out, you will be tempted to borrow money again for another project. And this continues to grow. And then talking about the resources, how are the resources put into the best use? To date, Uganda is the biggest export we have agricultural products. To be specific, maize. But what has the government done to make sure that maize is selling at the world market? See, actually the whole world consumes maize. Can be in porridge, in anything, but
yeah, it's among the most consumed.
The most consumed, and we produce it here more than any East African country, and yet we are doing badly in terms of the maize in the world market. Why do you think that is? Because government does not do enough planning to see which activities best make us. So I think the whole idea is the resources we have, if put into best use. For example, if Uganda started processing maize in a better way and make it to be sold at the world market. Unfortunately, the president talks about them when he says, I am going to, this district maybe produces soya. I want to go and do research with my scientists and discover how soya is doing in the world market. The biggest asset we have is maize. He's not doing any research to see how maize can better be made. Right now, a kilo of maize is about 700 shillings in this country. And people from outside come and buy it, and they go and sell it at a higher price. They have advantage of us. And the government allows this to happen. So I think, for example, if we found ways of maybe processing maize and taking it out to allow it to be going out, to export it out in large quantities and really including everybody to do that, by now, maize would be financing at least 20 to 30% of our budget. And maize does well in almost all the soils of this country.
Okay.
So the problem is policy, the problem is planning, the problem is government expenditures are very unnecessary. And some of the projects they bring, they're not called for. So we're going to look at the PDM. It will come. And the aftermath, you'll say, we have made this money to go. It has not. Already, I think it has already been. The Kitgum has started consuming it, for example. Districts are consuming it already. And above all, when these projects come, they appear as handouts. Okay? They're like appreciation to people who voted for the government to be in power. That is how they paint it. So, those are reasons why I think these programs fail, and we will continue borrowing and borrowing and borrowing as long as the government paints the image of projects to appear like a thank you for voting us in power.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Okay, thank you, Innocent, for that. Before I move to Natalia, let me just ask you something about the different projects that Uganda has come up with. We have seen so many programs. We have seen Emyoga, we have seen the NADS program in northern Uganda, we have seen NOSAF. The
Youth Livelihood Fund.
Yes, Youth Livelihood Fund, the Operation Wealth Creation.
Yes.
All these programs that Uganda has been coming up with, and trying to implement. Personally, I've not benefited from any direction.
I have never benefited
So my
either.
question is, Uganda has been coming up with this program. What is the main issue why we keep changing programs year in, year out? What is the main problem with the programs that keep coming in?
I will still get back to my point of inclusivity. Inclusivity. Different programs can run at the same time, but in different regions. You're not going to use parish development model to solve the problem of Karamoja and the one of maybe Busoga region or Bunyoro. And why is it not possible? Because regions have different problems. Regions have different needs. Regions have different endowments. For example, the Karamoja region we hear there are minerals there. A project will be fit to promote mineral mining maybe there and empower the people there. As long as maybe when you go to northern Uganda, you cannot talk about agriculture. So if they are diverse, and maybe in central Kampala here, maybe you can talk about ICT technology, other things.
Okay.
You get it? So that's how programs can be able to work out. But when you're using the problem of Karamoja to solve a problem in eastern Uganda, it's a waste. It's a waste. It is definitely going to fail.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me bring Natalia into the discussion.
Yes.
Let's get back to debt. The issues of debt. So what strategy has Uganda put in place to reduce our debt burden? Because I understand from the point of economics that it's not totally bad to borrow. And I understand that nearly every single, I've not heard of any country that does not borrow, even the US borrows. So what strategy have we come up with to reduce the debt burden that we have right now?
Wow, thank you so much once again. To begin with, one of the strategies that Uganda has embarked on, more so after the pandemic, is granting citizens like that permission, like giving them that opportunity to export at zero rate. of tariffs. So that in a way will encourage more people to take out their products, sell them, and of course, when they get that income from the sales that they exported, they come back and carry out investment in the country, and the government can tax those investments they have established down here, which will definitely have an effect on the revenue generation. And in return, that can be used as well to finance or service the debts that Uganda already has. Then another one is definitely some of these developments have not yet been implemented, but the proposals have already been intended. For example, in one of the newspapers of last month, the proposal was made in the parliament for removal of accommodation and feeding allowances of the government-sponsored students. So I believe in that way they're trying to cut expenses that you may talk of, like there are certain forms of expenditures that are definitely not called for, and by cutting them, the country stand a better chance of being in position of reducing and curbing down these increasing debts that it is ever incurring. Developments and initiatives that the government has also put in place includes the parish development model, much as it is bound, if not taken seriously, to face a lot of setbacks. We believe that if good policies, if good strategies are put in place, it can at least yield something, because this is going to be in regards with the capacity of each household to do something that they believe they can really do at their best to bring about financial generation. So that in a way the government can also tax, and without even taxing, it will bring a bigger picture of economic progress. Definitely, if each household is now in position to earn at least more than $2, which at the moment stand at $1, then it means that the economy is progressing. And we know that as an economy develops, as economy goes forward, it is in position to handle some of these things, like reducing on that taxes from outside, like borrowing time and again. So some of these developments are great ones that I must really acknowledge and appreciate the government about them. But still, like you brought forth, there are so many things that are still lacking, because you realize one project is brought now and then, but then the sustainability is a question. And that is why I think basically one thing is brought to cut down some of the problems that we have, like the debt burden, but before we even realize the benefits, they've already collapsed. So sustainability is also one thing that really has to be embarked on. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So, Willy, we are talking about public debt. So my question to you is, how best can Uganda reduce its debt burden that right now, according to the budget that was read in June, starts at 79 trillion Ugandan shillings?
Firstly, I think I should first point out the fact that Uganda's budget, about 60% of Uganda's budget is mainly used to cover expenses, payments, salaries, allowances, which means what is left is only a whooping 40% for everything else in the country. And the other thing is that 100% is not entirely financed by the revenue that we collect from taxes, because only about 30% or less is what we is of that amount is contributed by revenue collections, which means the remaining 70% is only supposed to be borrowed, because there is nowhere else we can get that money from. And the status quo currently is that whenever a person becomes an MP, firstly, they're given about 200 million to buy a vehicle, even when they already had vehicles. They're given salaries, which the last time I had, they were planning to increase, claiming that prices are becoming high for the MPs. And then, for every single time that a member of parliament is outside the country on official duty, they are given roughly $500 per day. Per day. That means that that the expenditure, our budgetary expenditure, is more towards the satisfaction of the people that we so-called leaders, instead of implementation of projects within the country to push us to where we want to get. Now, the first way that we can reduce our debt burden is by firstly scraping all these not called for expenses. The fact that someone is given an amount of 200 million to buy a vehicle, which other country does that? Tanzania did not get there by paying their members of parliament 200 million. And every single year that passes, at least we make it a point to create another constituency. So we make it a point to get yet another person to pay another 200 million for just a vehicle. And that is what we are still doing. And I think as I speak, the policymakers are thinking of how they are going to divide maybe Gulu into two to get another MP. That is what we are doing. So the debt burden is not created because we have it's not created because we have very many projects running here and there. No, it's created because policymakers and the government sees it fit. The only way that we can reduce that burden, yes, they're doing a few things here and there, but there are concepts that they have failed to understand. Government is becoming a family business. It is. And if you look at certain privileges that are supposed to be given to companies, things like tax holidays, these are not given on appropriate criteria. If I am the president and my brother has a company, that company is fit for tax holiday. That is what Uganda does. That is what we are doing. And if we do not come up with specified criteria for everything that is being done by policymakers, then there is no way we are going to curb our debt burden, because every other thing that we do is going to be towards spending the little that we have.
Okay. Thank you, Willy, for that. Let me move to Phoebe. So, Phoebe, what is your perspective on how best Uganda can handle the issue of its debt, which right now is very high, according to Innocent earlier in his discussion?
Well, first of all, Uganda needs to acknowledge it does have a large debt. They continuously borrow and they do not acknowledge the fact that they do have a debt. All right. So, in my own opinion, the best thing that Uganda can do is to first of all appreciate this debt and appreciate the effects of this debt within its own people. Because we are looking at pressure on resources, we are looking at exploitation from loaning countries, we are looking at the growth rate within the human capital becoming retarded time and again. We are looking at the general overview and how people look at the government becoming retarded, and we're looking at people losing interest in the government because of this. Generally, it is disorganizing the state of Uganda and it is just retarding us. So the best thing that the government can do for a start is to recognize that the fact that there is a debt and this debt comes with large implications. And when they do realize this, then they're going to take up policies, as said before, that are actually going to bring about better development within the country. For example, if you look at the taxation policies in Uganda, all right? Let's try to look at the kind of taxes that we have in Uganda. Do you realize that in Uganda we have a lot of regressive rather than progressive taxes? Why do I say they are regressive? Because a layman who is out there, most likely earning less than 3,000 shillings a day, is going to be asked to pay for a kilo of posho at 4K with someone who is most likely earning 1 million a day or within hours. So we're trying, like, it keeps on retarding the people who are in the lower income earning status. And then these people are also meant to pay these taxes continuously. And if they're to generate the money for this government, do you really think that this man is going to be able to bring about that value addition to the country? Is that tax going to be really relevant? Then let us move from the regressive taxes. Let us now go to the progressive. How are the progressive taxes exactly weighed about? All right? We're looking at people who are going to be taxed, but this is only going to be in the middle income. They people get around 300, let's say. 300 to 1 million. These are people who are going to go maybe through progressive. But then we are going to look at the fact that there are some people who flatline when the taxes are being given. For example, let us look at big institutions. Personally, I'm a product of Sharima. And I did take time and I talked to the administrators here and there, and they will tell you, oh, no, big institutions, first, we do not really bother paying electricity per unit like a layman. Rather, we sit down with Omeme and then we agree we are going to pay this amount. So now you look at such an instance, therefore there are most likely going to be chances that you're going to be paying less than someone who's going to be paying per unit of electricity. And when that happens, you're obviously going to retard yourself and you're going to retard the economy, and therefore there's going to be less development. Then you look at the people who are having, we have allowances. Allowances are not being taxed. We have big people getting big salaries. These people are not being taxed. So how exactly do you expect to say you're going to create taxation as a remedy for your debt burden, yet even the taxes themselves are questionable? How are you doing your taxation? Is it really viable? Is it going to give you back the returns that you actually expect to give? Then let us look at the openness of the economy. How open is Uganda's economy? We keep on saying we have an open market. You're free to enter, trade, and get out of business at your will. But let us look at the kind of businesses these people are actually entering. Most likely, when they tell you open up a business, you're going to be selling tomatoes and you're going to be getting a net income of 2,000 shillings a day. Is that really something that is really productive to the government? So the best way is when the government does realize this, they're going to begin a better taxation policy that is going to apply to all Ugandans. Why do we say all Ugandans? Because mandate of you being Uganda, that mere fact that you're Ugandan, it puts you to the duties of a citizen. And the first being that it is your duty to pay taxes. Why? You need to boost the economic growth of the country. So we do not see people being valued at different spaces, and therefore there are going to be less loopholes. And that taxation base, if everyone is valued at a better place, and then you can actually collectively do these things rightly, we look at more money coming into the country, and therefore we can cover for the debt burden. Then when you also look at the kind of people and the trade opportunities, if you create an openness whereby when people join work, you're not just joining to do a business of 3,000 shillings, but rather can you get out of it? How best can the government subsidize? The best thing is the government to subsidize and invest within its own people so that the businesses can bring back a better yield. And therefore it brings more money into the country. That is my personal view.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So let me move back to Innocent. So Innocent, let's delve into a different discussion, and that is on issues of revenue collection within the country, away from debt. So how are we faring in terms of revenue collection?
When you talk about revenue collection in this country, I basically look at taxes that are paid by individuals, by businesses, and all the others. But I give specific reference to companies, big companies. Companies are supposed to be the tax base of this country, same to individuals. And how do we do taxation and revenue collection? There is an effect. There is something that I feel is still not adding up. Taxes are supposed to be the greatest sources of government income in this country. Why? Because this country is one of the countries that has a very large number of foreign investment and has a very large number of the enterprises, small and medium-sized enterprises that are coming up. And then also, but I think basically that. But some things we have done wrong is are issues to do with tax holidays as a country or tax exemption as a country. The people at the helm of suffering so much are the medium-sized, small and medium-sized enterprises of this country that are basically locally owned. Whereas you look at big companies in this country that are supposed to be the greatest tax base or revenue base, are paying least or having tax holidays. Like somebody just made mention earlier on, I want to borrow, that as long as I am the president and you're my brother or sister, and you have a company, that company is liable to get a tax holiday or tax exemption. But the whole thing it is always mathematical. Just imagine if I had a company that produces, let's say, maize. I mean, that maybe processes maize, and it's a multi-billion company, and government decides not to tax me for a month. How much revenue do we lose? And at that, so when we're losing revenue through those tax holidays, unrealistic tax holidays, there are SMEs that are locally owned that are dying. Each time we give a tax holiday, SMEs are dying. Locally founded SMEs are dying. Why? Because now the tax burden is shifted to them. Because government, sets a target that by the end of this financial year, we should have collected this amount of taxes. But hey, there are those companies that need tax holidays because they appear to be the greatest employers of people, and so government wants to appreciate them. So the only way is to give them a tax holiday. But forgetting that the SMEs that are struggling down here are going to die because the burden is shifted to them. And so that is something government doesn't put in place. So let's say, imagine a company that earns over 30 million a day and government taxes them. But one time in a month decides not to tax them deliberately. Where does the tax burden go? And that is what reduces the purchasing power. And that is why tax collection still is a problem. And if you go to revenue points if you go to revenue collection points at the border points, these are too porous. And I think the way in which the Uganda Revenue Authority does revenue administration, that includes collection and all that, is still wanting. People can still bribe. People can still bribe at the border points and come with goods untaxed. You see that? And then secondly, tax evasion is still at its core. People under-register their wealth. People under-register their businesses just because they want to escape taxes. And this continuously affects the revenue. So when the revenue is lower, of course, definitely, like I said, it affects the local people, the SMEs, and all the others. Ask yourself, at this time of the economy, when we think the economy is doing dangerously, why my own business even collapsed? The small business, which also collapsed, because I felt the taxes are too much. So why do you think that bigger businesses are not collapsing, but rather the small ones are? So in such a situation, you will find MTN, for example, may be enjoying a tax holiday, when a water company, maybe in Kasese, is not being given a tax holiday in such a very harsh economy. So how do we expect these two to compete? They cannot. This is already a multi-billion project that is struggling against a small industry here. So when tax holidays are given, I think tax holidays should be given to, or tax exemption to be given to humanitarian companies if they are there, organizations. Because as long as a business is profit-oriented, I think governments should tax them every time, regardless. That's my thought about it.
Okay. So, okay, let me move on to Natalia.
Yes.
So, Natalia, there are several issues that came out from Innocent on issues of revenue collection, certain loopholes that he has brought out, like issues of tax holidays. We have seen in the new budget, the one for Aswadam was actually, extended. So my question to you is, what strategies is the government putting in place to maximize and increase the revenue collection in the country, which includes both tax revenue and non-tax revenue?
Well, I must bring to your observation that we actually have the domestic revenue and, of course, the external revenue, regardless of how they are collected, because we have the tariffs and all these in forms of taxes add up to the revenue that the country generates.
Okay, Natalia, let me just
So-
interrupt right there. We will take a short break, and when we come, then you will continue with that discussion. So let's take a short break and get right back with students of Gulu University, still discussing the status of Uganda's economy as Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence.
The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that short break. We are still with students of Gulu University and we are discussing the status of Uganda's economy as Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence. And Natalia, before we took a break, you were taking us through the different strategies that Uganda has put in place to ensure that we increase our revenue collection. As earlier on, we looked at issues of debt, we looked at issues of tax holidays. We have seen Bujagali Dam, their tax exemption has been extended. Yeah, so let's delve more into that discussion of maximizing revenue collection.
So truly, the issue of maximizing revenue collection is so much directly in regards to taxes. Why? Because taxes are the greatest sources of revenue that Uganda has. So most of them will be geared towards taxation, what can be done to improve tax collection as we look into it. Now, one of the strategies for revenue generation or mobilization is broadening the tax base. We realize there's so many valuable and productive activities, businesses, companies that are operating. Some of them are not registered. And if you're not registered, it is difficult to track you down that this person hasn't really paid taxes. So one of the ways through which the tax base can be broadened is checking out and identifying some of these valuable activities that are, because every day people are coming up with new ideas on something to be done, and of course in most cases they come with some source of income, with some bit of income generation. So the tax authority needs to spot out those different business entities that have not yet registered with them so that they really pay taxes, and that will broaden the tax base. Then another thing, of course, is improving the tax compliance. We realize that some people are truly reluctant to pay taxes, and of course, in most cases, they use or exploit the loopholes in the tax system. The fact that they're not known, the fact that perhaps they're operating somewhere deep in the village, which is not in most cases accessible, and tax authorities don't pay attention to. So that can be done rooting out the issues of tax evasion and tax avoidance and bringing to the face of the nation that these are some of the people who are doing businesses and we have identified them. Therefore, you need to comply to the policy because you're benefiting from the services, like the roads that are being constructed, and all this need money, and it's for the good of the country. So those are some of them. But even besides that, there is need to improve the perception of the citizens about tax or on the tax system. Many people don't know even why they pay taxes. Why? Because they're not seeing the visible impacts of the taxes they're paying, regardless of the form of the taxes. And this is even worse with the layman, the poor. And we know that the majority of Ugandans are poor. So can the government, has drains people? I mean, let me use draining because it's definitely very difficult to see some of the people in this nation benefiting from some of these taxes that they're paying. Like, for example, talk of Karamoja region or even the Greater North. There are a lot of services that are still lacking. If they're there, then you can look at the states. They're so dilapidating. You can go to the medical sector, the different health centers. You might find sometimes even people are sleeping on the floor. And we talk of us paying taxes. Maybe taxes imposed on sold. You don't know how you pay it, but you have already paid it. So can there be value for the taxes so that we as the citizens who are paying taxes are like, yeah, I'm not doing it in vain. Even if I pay it in one way or the other, I will benefit. That is another thing. Then even moving further, there is need to strengthen the institution as URA, Uganda Revenue Authority. No, sometimes you go to these wealthy people, of course in Uganda, today most things are operated on the basis of friends, relatives, and family. So can the tax authority be really strengthened to a point that they can go to one of the closest relatives to someone in the parliament or even in the state house and be like, we have come to collect taxes, and the person is not like, no, I'm not going to give you the taxes. What are you going to do? Where will you go to? Such a thing, if it can be cancelled and nullified, so that these people, as they do their activities, go about getting taxes or rooting out those ones who are not paying taxes so that they come on board and pay taxes, they have no setbacks. Then besides that also, as I conclude, this is not now so much related to the tax sources of revenue generation. It's more of the non-tax revenue. They also need to be revised and improved, like tuition payment, things to do with fines. They can be revised because some of them definitely could have taken a longer duration, maybe 1 or 2 decades. I say this because I want to relate it in a way to the living out allowances of the government-sponsored students. This has taken a very long time at the same rate, like more than 2 decades. More than 2 decades. So as we revise some of these things and we see, is there need to increase the fine? Is there need to reduce the fine? It will help because it will definitely bring about increase in the revenue that is collected. And that, all in all, are the different strategies that have been put in place.
Okay,
Mobilized.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Natalia. So let me move to Willy. So Willy, we are still talking about increasing revenue collection. We have seen the government, some of the points came out from Natalia, and we have also seen government has done, put in some strategies, like for example, when it comes to value added tax, there is something they call IFRIS now, where you have to issue receipts online so that government is able to track the different transactions that could have taken place. We have seen government has recruited more people within URA, and right now they are undergoing training to increase their capacity. We have seen government has revised tax laws. Government is introducing even taxes on digital transactions, because there are so many transactions that are ongoing online right now. We have seen several of these. So my question to you is, what more does government need to do at the moment in order to increase revenue collection? And that includes strengthening the different, whether it's the different methods that is has put in place already. So what more does it need to do on top of all this in order to make sure that its revenue collection capacity is increased?
Thank you. I think I appreciate very much the discussion from the first 2 panelists. The fact that they have pointed out certain strategies that government needs to put in place in order to increase revenue collection. And what is even more striking about those strategies is the fact that some of them have already been being tried by the government. So there are things that government is already doing, a lot of things. The only problem is the fact that there is a very big stance of insubordinacy. You see, this entire war on poor revenue collection, it is a very unfunny joke. And the fact that, yes, we have spoken about different taxes, for example, the progressives and the regressives, and the fact that if government needs to have a much better revenue collection, they should focus more on progressive taxes, which they are not doing. I think government is trying, yes, to pay attention towards tax collection by including all those taxes on even online transactions. But how plausible is it? How how workable is it? I mean, if I had transactions, online transactions, I know for a fact you cannot trust me. We know there are things such as VPNs which mask your location, which means even if I had a very functional online store, I can successfully evade taxes, avoid taxes, and do whatsoever I want with my tax, my tax expenditure, my would-be tax expenditure, and nothing is going to be done. Now, I'm not sure if it is the laxity in tax laws or government is just relaxed generally, but whatsoever it is, it also lies in improving on tax laws, making them a little more strict, because because the fines that are sometimes imposed onto people that avoid or evade taxes, for that matter, may not be pressing enough as for people to understand that it is very crucial to pay taxes. And even if they were pressing, as she mentioned, sometimes people want a value for money. People want to pay taxes very well knowing that I'm paying for this. Okay, yes, I'm paying a road maintenance tax, but I am en route Lira Kamdini Road, which doesn't have a hint of tarmac, doesn't. You see that? And you do not understand where your money is going. Why would you pay? It is like as if you're only making more money available for government officials to practice what they know best to do, corruption. So government and other institutions that are in charge of taxation and revenue collection need to improve on these laws that govern methods of collection and implementation of why these taxes are being collected. If we are collecting money to repair a road, let the road be repaired.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Willy, for that. So, Phoebe, let's start on a different discussion, and that is on the issue of the middle income status. So, my first question to you is, what does it mean to be in a middle income status? For someone out there who has been hearing about this on the media, what does it mean to be on in a middle income status?
Well, the middle income status is going to be valued at the general income status. Let's look at that. We're going to look at the state as a whole and how much you're able to generate, and we're going to look at per capita income, right? So what we're going to look at in this case is the country able to produce per capita income of most likely $1,300 to approximately $3,000. That's when we can probably say you qualify to be in the middle income status. But we're going to break this down into two. We have the lower middle income status and then the higher middle income status, whereby the 1,300 to the $3,000 is going to be looked at as the lower middle income status. Then we're going to look at from $3,000 to approximately $12,000 going to be looked at as the higher middle income status, and this should be per head in a country in a given year. That's what we look at as the middle income status.
Okay, thank you. Let me move to Innocent. So, Innocent, where do we stand as Uganda? I'm sure so many Ugandans out there are confused where we stand right now in terms of middle income status. We are not sure where we stand at the moment. So, where do we stand?
True, many Ugandans may be confused right now on whether they are at the middle income status or not, but certainly I'm not, because I know we are not there. We're not at the middle income status. Look, when the World Bank talks about the middle income status, we have to look at it as a whole. As a whole. Why do I say Uganda is not yet at the middle income status? And that means I'm ascertaining that the World Bank was right to deny and say, "Wait, you people, you have not reached there." True, some positive things may be talked about. For example, the growth of the economy, or as envisaged in the budget, that is there certainly. But I earlier on said that even at that, there are people who are living at the margin of society in the so-called middle-income status that was proclaimed earlier on. And this is a problem. So middle-income status looks at the person, the individual. First of all, the per capita income, that is income per head of individuals, and then income of the households, which is still very low for the case of Uganda, even if the economy is steadily progressing. Another thing that disqualifies us from being a middle income status, human rights in a country. How does the government handle human rights in a country? You know, our country is one of the countries that has the highest level of human rights violations. And this is a consideration for a middle income status. Number two, talk about the general welfare of people. The mortality rate, or the life expectancy of the human person in Uganda today. It doesn't reflect. It's I think for the men is about is it 40? It's 35, and the women stay I think at least 37 years old. And this is that means most of these people are dying as youth. So that is another reflection that Uganda is not there. And then now, I talked about welfare, but if you look at the general life of people today, did you know that in this part of in this country here, there are parts of this country where people are having 1 meal a day, and that middle income status says every Ugandan, if you say Uganda has already attained middle income status, every Ugandan must be able to have a decent meal, and not just a decent meal, a decent housing facility. So the whole concept of middle income status is the human growth. Are the people growing with the economy as the economy accelerates? Are people growing? That to me is the entire aspect of middle income status. And so I will say we're not there. If you look at the housing structures, I come from a place where people I think the poor housing affects even the production of women. And that's not middle income status.
You might want to explain that. You might want to expound on that statement.
Because as a woman, there's so many things that affect, by the way, getting pregnant. People are not barren, people are not impotent, but conditions that surround you affect you in getting pregnant. How do I say that? For example, just imagine staying in a grass-thatched house, and all of a sudden that was a day, maybe a day 2 or a day after or the day of your ovulation, and this is the time maybe the man wants to meet you. And is it possible? Is it possible when it's raining and it's raining on you? Can you get pregnant really? You can also. These things affect human development. You understand? Okay. So that is where I say middle income status is a dream to us. We have not reached there. It's a myth.
Okay.
So as Ugandans, that's a joke, but that's how far we are. Get it? Leave alone the meals, but somebody who is eating beans every now and then may not easily respond. And then there are certain foods that enhance those things. The biology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
So yeah, that's what I think. I think we are not yet there. We're still a distance from middle income status. That declaration was just it was a declaration that came because somebody thought we were already there, and the person looked at
They were excited.
a few things. This I call it excitement, rural urban excitement, something like that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, Innocent, for that. Moving away from Innocent's biology, let's get right again into that discussion with Natalia. So, Natalia, what are some of the setbacks, challenges that Uganda is experiencing that is preventing us from entering the middle income status?
Wow. I should be lamenting because, honestly speaking, there are so many bad to talk about when it comes to Uganda than the good. And particularly the subject or topic of economy, because it's the basis on which almost everything can thrive. Like, if economy is down, you cannot talk about people feeding well and all these other things. It goes into biology and chemistry.
Oh,
But
yes.
back to the exact topic, there's so many setbacks. We have the resources, we have the money. Money is in circulation, much as to a small group of people strategically distributed. So all these issues are within us, and we are actually the solution providers. But even letting alone that, the things that even a young baby knows that is a problem in Uganda, a 2-year-old baby, issues of corruption. When you talk of the inflation rate, that at the moment, even a person who has not done economics knows that there is inflation. They've not been to the class, but they feel it, they experience it. So eventually, when they get into the classroom, it's not a new thing. I think even the topic should just be scrubbed off, because this is something we're experiencing. Maybe we need to put more emphasis on what can be done, the solutions and so forth. And things like the employment rate is still very low. Can we create opportunities among and within all these different resources that we have, and we make the people within benefit from it? When you talk of Uganda having oil, having copper, gold in Karamoja region, what can be done to change these existing resources into something tangible that can bring about people's development in terms of them earning income and improving on their welfare, that can bring about them stop rioting on streets, that we need more employment because they have it at hand? What do you blame the government for? And in that sense, the government will not come to stop you from rioting that ends into gunshots, and we talk of the government violating people's rights. So the resources we have to be put into use. They're not being put into use. This is just one of the setbacks. I've already talked of corruption. There are many opportunities that the citizens of these countries have, but they're being taken up by people from outside. Can the government build the capacity of the citizens so that they are at the forefront of some of these things? When we talk of building or constructing a road or a pipeline to probably bring about massive investment in oil, who are the people we are thinking of? Probably at the moment, the government is thinking of the Chinese and the rest. So as we wait for the implementation of such things, can't the citizens be trained so that they are the people who champion the entire thing, which brings about income to themselves? And so opportunities are not really being tapped by the citizens, not because they're not there, not because they don't have the knowledge and the experience, and if they don't have, whose responsibility is it? It is, of course, the government to help the citizens reach where they cannot reach, because sometimes their hands are tied up. So opportunities are there, but the citizens are not tapping it. They're limited in one way or the other. So these are just some of the few things that I think are really limiting Uganda or taking Uganda backwardly in terms of it moving forward towards the middle income status that we so much desire, and just at the mention of it that we have entered into it out of excitement, people are like, it's even unbelievable. So even if Uganda is to be declared a middle income status nation in the next 2 years, it will be hard for me to believe. Yes, even if it's the World Bank or what, it will be hard for me to believe, because a lot is still wanting. We have more cries than glory to be excited about. So basically that.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Let me move to Willy. So, Willy, what do we need to do as Ugandans? I mean, by Ugandans, I mean both citizens and the stakeholders, in order to ensure that we enter a middle income status?
The gauge for a middle income status, at least the most important of them all, includes per capita income, GNI, that is the gross national income, and as she did mention, it lies between 1,036 US dollars to about 12,000. Now, the only way, and personally, I still think it's not an accurate gauge, but it is what, of course, the World Bank and IMF use
Recommend.
or recommend. They think it is the best indicator of growth in any particular country. I think the declaration that was made a few months ago of Uganda being a part of the middle income economies was not necessarily a lie, but it was also very fast said. It was more of, as he mentioned, an act of excitement. You see, at that point, I think Uganda had hit the threshold, but they were there for a very limited time, and of which, let me give an example, a very small example. If we wanted to speak amongst ourselves and say that the only way we are going to say that someone is rich is if they can spend 10,000 per day, and then we are all spending only 5,000. Then this one day your rich uncle comes and he keeps on throwing at you money. You spend this 10,000 or 12 every single day for that 1 week that he is around, and then he leaves. You get right back onto the 5,000. Should we claim that, okay, yes, you've already gotten into the rich category? Of course not. I think it should be a more consistent expenditure. Now, as you are spending that 10,000, spend that way for a certain amount of, a certain period of time. Say if Uganda had hit that $1,000 threshold, and they were there for about a year, 2 or 3. I'm not sure what the IMF uses, but if they were there for that time, surely they would not have been denied the status. However, when the IMF denied them, I think Uganda Bureau of Statistics, yes, the World Bank, Uganda Bureau of Statistics came and claimed that the World Bank had used wrong statistics.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes, they said that they had used statistics of a different year, and that to declare themselves a middle income economy, they had used statistics of a more current year. And as such, they were having clashes between the people who basically put up the entire rules, and it's like having a fight with the referee over who should get a card. It doesn't work that way. You see that? It is just a work of excitement. Now, I think if as Uganda we are to get into a middle income economy or status, we are supposed to also focus on every other single consideration. Other organizations like the World Health Organization, the United Nations, they also come up with different matrices that show the development of a particular country. Now, most of these don't necessarily look at money, per capita income. They focus on very many different things. Things like employment opportunities, schooling, basically standard of living. And don't get me started on standards of living, because if it is a major gauge for middle income economies, then Uganda definitely is not almost getting there. A few years ago, a critical analysis of Uganda's journey towards a middle income status was projected that Uganda, if it had continued to move in a more constant manner, which was, I think, about a rate of 6%, there would be a middle income status, a middle income economy in around 2031. But of course, I think there are some factors that downplayed consistency. Things like the outbreak of coronavirus, which tied down the entire economy. And with tying down the entire economy comes with closing businesses, which comes with reduced revenue collection, which further reduces the GNI. And you would see that if the country really desires to be amongst these countries that are called middle income economies, they should firstly consider standards of living. And with standards of living, it's not just about having 2 meals a day or 3. No, it includes every other aspect, starting from the very least, having a school life. Yes, schooling, a quality education, then employability, versus employment, because we also have people who are highly employable and yet not employed. You look at Uganda, we have universities like Makerere, Gulu University, some of the best institutions within East Africa or Africa at large. And even then, we do not take our own labor in first priority, because I think, I don't know, government currently came to sanity and they have been constructing roads in different places. But you can never go onto a construction site and you fail to see a non-black. I mean, you would find Chinese probably heading heading these constructions.
And Ugandans doing
That
the manual
is
work.
yes, exactly. And even to simply move a tractor, they might want to get someone else. They could be black, but that doesn't mean they're Ugandans. It could be a Kenyan. So that is how much trust we have in our own education system. We know for sure that even if we have gotten the highest grades, we cannot do the practical work.
Okay.
And if we are to get into this middle income status, that would include things like, as I mentioned, trust in our own education system, then an acute implementation of all projects. The conversation earlier was surrounding things like PDM, MYOGA, Operation Wealth Creation, which at some point was described as, was it Operation Poverty Creation, something like that. And all those things, those are small factors that basically show that we are not ready to get into the middle income economy. And even as we are not ready, we are not doing anything to get there.
Okay.
So there is a lot to do and a lot to be desired.
Okay. Thank you. Natalia, you have something to add?
Yes, one thing that I think it will be unjust to leave the room without adding is the fact that Uganda's projects that would have been related into growth of economy, hence middle income status, are not sustainable. Right down from the smallest of things upwards. They start and before long. And this was manifested in the declaration of the middle income status itself, because the issue was sustainability. I think that makes it clear, sustainability. For how long, if we say that Uganda is a middle income status, can we sustain it? Even if the World Bank was like, no, you take the debate, you take the argument, it's okay, you are. For how long would they sustain that, of which right now there is no basis of sustainability? So that's it.
Okay, thank you. So, Phoebe, is there something you want to add to the issue of the middle income status, or we move on to citizens in the money economy?
I do have something to add. Well, we realize that we all look at income status, but realize we're actually living a myth. Given that, what are we using? What are we using to measure this exactly? We're going to say we have reached the 1,300 US dollars. How many of you earn within that range? What is happening in Uganda is actually, Loki one time cracks a joke and is like, Natalia is the sodil of all of us. Like, none of you is earning, but she comes with her 1 million, and then all of us shall be counted to having 200,000 Ugandan shillings. So she comes in with her million, and then they use it to count it at that. So basically, what can the government do to this? We're looking at it creating trade openness. When you bring about trade openness, you want to look at subsidization. If you want to grow your income, if you want to grow your people, get them into more jobs. We look at about 70% work range. Are you able to get that 70% to maybe work within the industries within Uganda rather than white? Then let us leave the smaller population of outsiders to work within the 30%, but we have our people being employed, and not just being employed in small areas, but tired of people getting shocked. Okay, we're looking at people who can actually generate a better income. Then that's one way you can actually increase your GNI, and you do it not only myth relatedly, but then you can actually bring down in a way that's more realistic, because you can actually look at people earning, not once a day, or covering heads of people. Then we all assume we have reached somewhere. In actual sense, it's only one man who is getting us there. And if it is sustainable in a way, then you can look at people. There are several things, by the way. I don't know if you guys realize, but small businesses actually do have a lot of road. For example, ladies, let's look at the fashion industry. Have you guys taken time to look at the crochet industry? It is very new, but this is something that has come right from the culture where girls used to knit bags, and right now we are looking at crochets being sold very expensively. You find a two-piece going for 40 to 50K. But this is something the government has not thought about. So rather than you looking at yourself importing expensive clothes, go back to your industries, tell them we want you guys to make wool. We are going to train girls how to do these things. And then you market it and you export it, because very few countries do these things. You get, it's like you buying a Masai crafts. Those shoes are very expensive. You're not going to go to Uganda Road and you get them below 40K. But these are people who just sit down and work on beads and make crafts. So similarly, given that we are the only people doing the crocheting business within Africa, can we market it? How best can you empower your people in order to create a market standard?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Phoebe. So, Innocent, let's delve into the discussion of the citizens in the money economy. What is its status right now?
When we talk about citizens in the money economy, it's basically inclusiveness or inclusivity of the citizens in the economic aspects of this country. Basically, before a financial budget is read out, I think government does a consultation, and does an analysis of the financial state in the different situations of the country, and comes up with those estimations. But what is questionable is how far this actually goes. Now, if you talk about national financial inclusion policy of the citizens, it has pillars, and one big pillar of financial inclusion or citizens in the money economy is a pillar of financial literacy, which is something that needs to be put here, because it's the father of all the other pillars that cut across. So I feel financial inclusion should basically start with financial literacy, that people should be empowered on how to handle money, and this brings them closer to the inclusion. It helps them also to think out of the box. If people are involved in the planning, and or if they're included in the financial issues of this country, it becomes easier for them to put up investments, and to be able to come up with inventions that are towards that. So financial literacy is important, because when people are empowered, they think towards building the economy. But the state of financial inclusion in the country is a bit wanting. Why? Because government does not do enough consultation. Even if they do a little bit of consultation, it's not inclusive. The sample space is narrow. The people who are at the margin of society should be the ones who are consulted most when economic decisions are being taken, and they should be included. Or if financial discipline is to be instilled, these are the people to start with. And I think that is a bit wanting in this part.
Okay, we have run out of time, so I'll let Natalia conclude on that issue of inclusion of citizens. So how best should the government include citizens in economic decisions in this country?
Well, there are already parts of the country that are ahead when it comes to financial inclusion in the money economy. And what remains is considering the people at the margin, of course. This can be effective through coordination, getting people, personnel who are well versed with what is supposed to be done, and get to these people, equip them with the skills on things like financial literacy. But even besides that, extending the actual money or finances needed to them, so that if they can start the list of the things they think they're capable of, as long as it's productive and it will bring about a growth in the economy, they are facilitated, they're aided, so that they at least come to that. Then another thing can, of course, be consumer protection and grievance redressal. The government need to see into it that people are not discouraged from consuming the locally produced things by ensuring that the quality meet what is really expected of the people who produce. And this will bring about growth in the economy, because now it is going to be mostly the products of the local consumers that are bought. And these people are also taxed. And the revenue generated out of the charges that are imposed on them can bring about growth in the money economy. And in a way, it will encourage more local people to also produce or establish such small things that can bring about production of goods and services. That leads us to the aspect of inclusivity overall.
Okay.
Basically that.
Thank you so much. I know Willy and Phoebe would have loved to contribute to that topic, but definitely we will have a more deeper discussion in the future on that topic. So we have come to the end of the talk show. I would like to say thank you so much to students of Gulu University for being our panelists for today's talk show. Thank you for the contribution to the talk show. I would like to say thank you so much to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for organizing the Inter-University Debate, which is a platform where university students are able to discuss matters that affect this country and as well as matters that affect the world at large. For this week's edition, we have had Gulu University, and they have been discussing the status of Uganda's economy as Uganda celebrated its 60 years of independence. Thank you so much to the viewers. Feel free to put your comment and what you think about these topics, your contribution in the comment section. And also you can put in your contribution on social media and tag Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. We have come to the end for this week. See you again next week with another university, same time.